everyone, how's it going? This is Big Lair here on Jack's Private Coffee Corner. Just thought I'd make a woo-woo video for everyone. I haven't done this in a while. And I've had a hard time deciding what exactly to talk about because there are just so many topics, so many things. You know, one topic that I see a lot on forums, different forums, people talk about woo-woo. There's, you know, chemtrails and you know, our alien craft involved and all of that stuff. And that's not what I want to talk about, but I guess if I think about chemtrails and what you know, because I knew about chemtrails like 20 years ago. So, and at that time, well, it wasn't until recently, probably the last 2 years, that I really realized, maybe 3 years, I really realized, hey, I've got these psychic abilities, you know. I'm seeing things that other people aren't seeing. I'm knowing things that other people aren't knowing. You know, trying to think of a good example. Well, one in Malaysia. I was driving with my family between Kuala Lumpur and Penang Island. We used to live in Penang Island. Well, we lived in Kuala Lumpur also at one point, but so it's about a 3.5-hour drive between Penang Island, which is way up in the north of Malaysia, and then Kuala Lumpur is closer down to the middle. So it's a 3.5-hour drive on the highway, beautiful highways, really nice country to drive in. Their infrastructure is pretty awesome as far as roads and highways go. So we made that trip a lot. And we had a dentist that we liked in Kuala Lumpur, and we used to live there, so you know, we had a lot of friends and whatnot. So after we moved to Penang, we just felt like, well, it'll be nice to get away for the weekend, and we'll visit the dentist, you know, do our dentist appointment, whatever. We had a friend who was a doctor too. Anyway, and sometimes we would just go there and stay in a hotel for a couple days and goof off, which was awesome, right? So on one of these trips, we had gone to Kuala Lumpur and we're driving back to Penang. And it was real fun because on the drive, usually on the drive there and the drive back, it might rain 2 times. It'd be completely sunny and you drive a ways, like some dark clouds move in, it rains like crazy on you. And then, you know, drive a little bit more, clouds open up, now it's totally sunny. Everything dries off. Happens again. So anyway, one of those, so it's kind of fun to drive there actually. So we're driving back up to Penang and we had just passed, we were getting close to Ipoh. If anybody knows about Malaysia, I'll just say the names here. Ipoh, it's about, I don't know if it's halfway between Kuala Lumpur and Penang, but it's a nice place to stop. They've got a pretty good, if you're driving from Kuala Lumpur towards Penang, they have a nice area, like a rest area you can pull off, and they've got like a big supermarket and, you know, some food stalls and bathrooms and whatnot, right? So, and I wasn't going to stop there. I wasn't going to stop there at all. I had gotten gas at a different place, different rest area. I was good to go all the way to Penang. So, we're driving, and I was actually talking with my wife. She's saying, oh, are you going to stop in Ipoh today? And I said, no, I just got, you know, gas at this other place, and we're good. I'm feeling pretty good. We'll drive all the way through. Now, I don't like to drive for a long time. Years ago, I made a 21-hour drive. No, it was actually a 16-hour drive straight with no rest, and it kind of ruined me. I was a young guy at the time. I was probably, what, 21, 22 or something, fresh out of the military. That drive just ruined me for driving the rest of my life for whatever reason. So for me, 2 hours is my limit, but in Malaysia, I could easily drive this 3.5-hour stretch. Beautiful wide highway. So we're driving along, you know, she says, are you going to stop here? No, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going straight through. And then like a voice said to me, you got to stop in Ipoh. You got to stop in Ipoh. It was like that, like, you got to stop in Ipoh. And I was like, what the heck? And I'm thinking in my head, should I stop in Ipoh? What the heck? Yes, you need to stop in Ipoh. I heard that like several times in a row. So I said to my wife, I said, well, we'll stop in Ipoh. She's like, really? Thought you said you weren't gonna. And I said, well, I just heard a voice tell me you'd better stop in Ipoh. And, you know, I know better than to not listen to those voices, right? Like I know I've got to listen to these voices because I've been given warnings numerous times in my life, and I think the first couple times I didn't listen, had some, you know, bad stuff happen, but now after those 2 times I always listen. So we pull off in Ipoh, and I remember this big truck in front of us, and then there was a car that was really tailgating on us the whole time. I don't know why. They could have just passed us. You know, they could have easily passed us. They didn't need to be tailgating, but they were tailgating us. And then there was a motorcycle behind that car, a guy in a motorcycle. And in Malaysia, a lot of people would ride these tiny motorcycles, maybe, you know, like 100 cc's or 125 cc's, the engine, and then they would get really close to a car. And, you know, there's like that, what do they call it? There's some effect, you know, if you're on a motorcycle and you get like behind a semi or a big truck, it's almost like a wind tunnel. It becomes very efficient for you to ride, be, you know, close to this vehicle, although it's dangerous, right? So there was a moped, or not a moped. I called them mopeds because they were tiny motorcycles. But so there's a motorcycle behind the car. So it's us. Well, in front of us is a big truck, huge truck, like a semi. There's us, there's a car tailgating us, and then behind that car is a guy in a motorcycle. So, you know, you'd better get off in Ipoh. So I get off in Ipoh. And as we're pulling up into the parking lot, I thought I heard a noise, like a big noise. But, you know, could be like a million things. It's a huge rest area. So we get out. Don't really need to do anything, you know, we just kind of walk around for about 15 minutes. I think I got a coconut water. That's one cool thing about Malaysia. People are just like, some guy will pull up in a truck just full of coconuts, and he'll like split it open for you and stick a straw in there, like, here, you can drink coconut water. So I used to do that a lot. So I get a coconut water, drink it down. Okay, let's get back on the road. So we pull out of this rest area, and then about, boy, I don't know. We pulled out, and you kind of have to go around the road kind of curves off to the left. As we got around that curve, there was a huge accident between that semi that was in front of us, the car that was behind us, and the motorcycle that was behind him. And I won't go into the details because it was really a gory scene for that car and motorcyclist behind us, and the truck was pulled off. And I said, and my wife's like, oh my God, that was the truck in front of us. And I said, you know, and that guy was tailgating us, you know, and the motorcycle's behind him. And that voice just said to me, you need to get off at Ipoh. And I did, and I said, oh my God, we would have been smashed between all of these vehicles, you know, and the truck was huge. And it was just one of the goriest acts, because in Malaysia, interesting thing about Malaysia, if there's an accident, they don't come up and like cover up the body or do anything. I mean, there was actually no time for anyone to be there. I mean, there was a truck driver and a couple people had stopped, and they were like kind of looking around, but they don't cover up bodies, and you know, you see like blood sprayed all over or whatever, bodies torn apart. They're just there. That's just a part of life. Get used to it, kind of thing, right? So yeah, that was, whew. So I listened to my intuition. So I just want to establish that, you know, a number of times in my life I've been told things. I've been told before there were big earthquakes here in Japan. Helped us prepare for some things. And actually, now that I think about it, this is a really good woo-woo, a woo-woo thing to talk about. You know, we were in Japan, or I was in Japan, you know, for like a little over 14 years, married, 3 kids. You know, a couple nice cars, living in a house, had a great life, had a business, you know, everything was going smooth. And a voice told me, you got to get out of Japan. You got to leave Japan by the end of the year. By New Year's is what the warning was. And I was a little nervous. Long story short, I find a job in Malaysia, and we left Japan on January 7th, 2011. Well, March 11th, 2011 was that whole Fukushima disaster. You know, the earthquake, the big tsunami, the nuclear power plant melted down, and it's been spewing radiation into the air to this day. They don't talk about it anymore, but it's still spewing out of there to this day. And yeah, that's why I was meant to get the heck out of here. And I wasn't really keen on coming back to Japan ever because I was thinking about the radiation, right? But then my father-in-law got cancer, terminal cancer, and then something just said to me, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to go back now. So I'm just having faith in the universe that everything's okay and I'm back here now. So I've had a lot of really, really good advice in my life from, I don't know who, the universe, God, put whatever name you want on it. I prefer to say the universe or the collective consciousness or the universal consciousness is actually my favorite one. So yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about, now I'm getting to the point of my video here after almost 12 minutes or 11 minutes of talking, is the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records, what are these? Well, they're a record of every life every human has ever had. I don't know if they include animals, are animals and insects and every other living thing included. I have no idea. I just know that as far as humans go, if you've been incarnated as a human at any time in the history of the world, there is a record of your life. And that record of your life is in this huge, what I'll call a library called the Akashic Records. Some people call it the Akashic Hall of Records. It's a little tough to talk about because it's not a physical place as we know it. It's not like, oh yeah, you fly all the way to China and then you go north so many hours by plane and then you reach this, Akashic Record, the Hall of Akashic Records. It's not like that. It's on a different plane, a different level of reality, a different level of existence. I don't know if that's the best way to say it or not. Now, I think when you pass away, you're able to access it. If you meditate a lot, which is something I do almost daily, if you meditate a lot, you are able to access the Akashic Records. It takes a tremendous amount of concentration. At least it does for me. So just imagine there's a record of every life, every human has ever lived on the earth. So if you were able to access the Akashic Records through meditation, and that's the only way I can do it, maybe someone else has figured out how to, I don't know, remote view or something. The Akashic Records, I have no idea. But for me, through meditation, I can access it. And when I'm accessing it in that way, I'm able to see, I'm able to hear, I can sometimes understand touch. I'm able to, grab objects and stuff like that. But I don't have a big memory or a very good memory of touching things, but I have a very good memory for what I've seen and what I've heard there. It's this wonderful looking place. It's all like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's this humongous building. It looks like some kind of marble or stone to me. And it's lined with all of these like bookshelves. And so if you're able to, meditate and go there and have enough concentration that your conscious mind is present to where you can remember what you're looking at, when you finish your meditation, if you're able to do all of that, you could find, oh, Jesus Christ, I want to see Jesus Christ's life. Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. Of course, you can access your own lives, and that's really interesting. So, now my name is Larry. I'm living in Japan. I was born in America. In this life, I'm 51. Well, I've had so many lives before this one. I can go to the library, or to this, a library, these Akashic Records, this hall. You can go there, and you just think about, I want to go to my section. Boom, then you're there. You're there. And then you can see all of these books of your past lives. Now, what's really fascinating about this place is, okay, so you got a book with this is a little hard to wrap your head around, I know. Just bear with me here. So you've got like a book of your life, right? So you pull the book off the shelf. Normally I don't have to grab anything. I just look at the book and then boom, it's open. And you have a few options. You can read the book. You can watch the book like a movie, like you're an observer watching a three-dimensional scene, a movie, or you can go back into your body and experience the life as it was being lived. Isn't that amazing? So you've got those three options as far as I know. And when you're an observer, you can choose the point of view, you know. How are you seeing all of this? Where are you standing and whatnot? And you can, like I said, also experience it as though you were back there doing it again. But you're actually like just, you know, it's like you're watching the greatest movie ever. You know, like a virtual reality. It's very close to virtual reality, I would guess, because you're slipping back into your body, the body that you had during that lifetime. So you can read your life, you can observe it as a movie, or you can participate in it. Participate as in you go back into your body. You can't change anything. You know, what you did, you've done. You know, you can't go back and you know, like, oh, at this point I said something terrible to someone, I'll go back and not say it. No, it's what's done is done. You just have to, you can, you know, like relive it, so to speak, right? And it can be very emotional. It can be very emotional because the things, you know, that we've done in past lives, number one, you know, as I'm sitting here talking to you, you know, making this video, looking at my camera, I have a really good memory of the life I've lived now as Larry, 51, born in America. But if you go back, let's say, trying to think the time period, I'm pretty sure I was a well-known painter in a previous life. And I know everyone says that, oh, I was Cleopatra, or I was this person or that person, you know. I get it, you know, and I have a good friend of mine who says, hey, no one ever says that they were shoveling shit in Cleopatra's stables. How come they never say that? The only reason I say that is because I actually remember living that life. I remember people that I knew. I even met someone in my current life who was very close to me in that past life and knew all kinds of stuff about the person. And then I even took the person to a library, because I'm an artist in this life also, which is pretty interesting. And that girl is into art. And I took her to a library and I said, I'm going to blow your mind. And she wasn't even from America. She's from a different country. We just happened to meet, which is another fun thing about life. You'll meet people that you've known in previous lives. And I showed her a painting, a portrait of herself from that life. Now, I showed a couple other people. They thought, oh, it's a dead ringer for her now. She didn't think it looked so much like her, but she's living in the same country now as she did in that life. And I said to her, this is absolutely you. You don't remember this? And she's not what I would call open to woo-woo type stuff, right? So that kind of has a bearing on if the person, you know, finds it believable or not. But anyway, I was aware enough of what I did in that life that when I met this person, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, we were really close, and I painted a portrait of her. I want to show her this portrait. And sometimes that kind of stuff can backfire on you, because a lot of people are not open to the woo-woo aspect of life, and things like past lives, it's like too scary for them for whatever reason. So yeah, you can you know, access this Akashic Hall of Records. You can go back and look at your lives, and it becomes very emotional because, you know, as I'm living this life here, I don't remember being so-and-so. I'm not going to say the name of the painter because, yeah, I just don't want to say it. Just enjoy knowing it myself. But, you know, you don't remember that life as well as you remember your current life, right? So when you go back and watch this, you know, you might have made choices. You might have been the type of person, you know, you might have been an asshole in one of these lives, right? You might have been a jerk, a total jerk. Maybe you were a hateful person or a spiteful person, or you were, you know, you could have hurt people. Now, I'm not saying I did any of those things. However, you know, looking back at some of my lives, it's like, holy mackerel, why'd I do that? Why'd I do that? Well, what I've learned from all of it is that, you know, for example, this life that I'm talking about, the painter, that was 250 to 300 years ago, I believe. Yeah. Took place in Northern Europe. And you have to remember, what were the times like then? What was life like in those days? You know, you start going back, you know, more than 200 years, life was pretty harsh in a lot of places. It was pretty harsh, you know. We didn't have the same, you know, society was much different. People had different moral values. There was a different structure to society. You know, what was acceptable and unacceptable back then is very different from what it is now. Very, very different. You know, back in those days, if you had money, and in that life, I was lucky. I was a well-known artist. I mean, I was one of the artists that was famous during his lifetime and actually had a lot of wealth because of the art that I did. So I wasn't hurting for money at all. I was able to travel all over Europe. I met, you know, royalty from various countries. And you know, having that, just having money and, you know, hobnobbing, so to speak, being able to move around in those kinds of social circles gave me so many more choices in life of what to do than the average person, like my friend said, who was shoveling shit somewhere in a stable. There were a lot of people with really hard lives in those days, you know. So that's one thing, you know, if you're ever able to access the Akashic Records and see one of your past lives, do not beat yourself up over it. You know, you might see a life where, oh man, I wasn't a very good person. What the? And then you're going to feel bad in this life. No, 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 no. There's a reason for everything, right? There's a very good reason for everything. It's not up to you or I now to judge ourselves, to judge what we did in a past life, because we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we need to experience, you know, all gamuts, you know, the whole spectrum of being a human being. And that includes everything that's, you know, everything from super good to super bad. You know, we're all here to experience all of those things. So, yeah, it's not all like, you know, rainbows and unicorns and, oh yeah, I saw my past life, it was amazing, you know, now I'm enlightened. It doesn't quite work that way. And enlightenment sometimes brings on depression. Brings on depression because once you're enlightened and you really understand things, then you realize the true nature of everything, or even half of it. You understand the true nature of it. It's not this, you know, you're going to be happy forever type thing. No, it's quite depressing when you understand everything. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about that. So the Akashic Records, it's a very interesting place. Like I said, you can access your lives, your past lives. You can view them, as I said, in 3 different ways. And you can also view the lives of other people. You know, you could pick some historical figure. You know, you could pick, well, not even a historical figure. You could say like, oh, I wonder what my grandpa, what were things like for my grandpa? Because one of my grandfathers started working when he was 7. He was selling coal out in the streets of this city when he was 7 years old. What kind of life did he have? You know, I know he suffered from malnutrition. And hey, this wasn't like 200 years ago. This was, he's born in 1914, so in 1921. In 1921, a little less than 100 years ago, kids were working in America. Think about that. Now we're like, oh, every kid has to go to school. Every life is precious. You know, this and this and that. Less than 100 years ago, kids were working. You know, child labor was a fact of life. You know, your dad passed away. Hey, too bad, so sad. Now you guys got to get out and work. There's no one to, no one to bring home the bacon. You guys got to work. You know, my grandpa worked. His older brother worked. He had a younger sister who, you know, didn't work. And things were tough. Things were tough, you know. And I've talked to people in Japan, so many people in Japan. Up until World War II, Japan had it rough. People had it rough in Japan. You know, now we think of it as, oh, it's this super advanced country with all this technology. Well, it's not all of that. What you're seeing is a very thin, what you see on the news about Japan is like this very thin slice of one part of society, a very elite part of society. If you were here living like I am, you'd understand that's only a very, very small part of Japan. Things are not like that everywhere. They're very, very different. They're not as advanced as you would think. Okay. You know, houses don't have central heat. Well, only, you know, if you built a house in the last 3 years, probably you have a central heating system. But if you didn't build your house in the last 3 years, you know, 99.99% of the homes do not have central heat. They don't have insulation. They still have single pane windows, even though it gets, you know, below zero. Well, sorry, it gets below freezing, I'll say, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius. It gets below freezing, I'll say. Most houses don't have modern plumbing. I mean, they have, you know, toilets and bathtubs, but they're not connected to a modern plumbing and sewage system like we would be in America, right? It's very different. So, you know, even up until World War II, I've talked to so many people, you know, who were born before World War II, and they've just told me horror stories. You know, you think about my grandpa in 1921 selling coal on the streets. Well, up until World War II, even after World War II, probably till 1950, kids were working in this country. You had a lot of kids working. They had to because families just couldn't make it if their kids didn't work. And, you know, up in northern Japan, at least up until the war, if people had a daughter, they sold their daughter. Because, you know, she was like a useless eater. She wasn't going to help out on the farm or wherever. You know, she was just going to consume resources, and can't have that. We'll just sell her now, make a few bucks, and, you know, most of those girls were sold off into prostitution. Hey, that's how it was. That's how it was. Just think about that. You know, World War II was, you know, ended in 1945. So, you know, we're less than 80 years away from that. That's how it was. That's how it was. And now everybody here has to go to school, you know. You're a kid, you go to school. So has society moved forward? I don't know. I really don't know. Now, somebody, you know, may be watching this and going, oh my God, that's terrible. How can you say that? Of course, it's better for kids to go to school now and then have the life that they had, you know, in Japan, or the life my grandfather have. Really? I don't know. When I was in Malaysia, I saw a lot of kids living out in the jungles and poor areas. Some of those kids looked super, super happy. You know, I met people in Malaysia, adults, right? Adults that are married and had families living in very Spartan conditions. You know, they had a roof over their head, but, you know, not a pot to piss in, so to speak, right? They didn't have anything. And they basically, you know, they gathered enough food for that day. They weren't thinking about tomorrow. They gathered enough food for that day, and then they just kind of chilled out the rest of the day, did what they wanted to. You know, I went to a lot of places where, you know, people invited me to their house or to like a local, I can't even say a local restaurant, because there, if someone just put up like 2 logs of wood and brought a pot of curry, that could be a restaurant. You know, imagine that, right? Just set some banana leaves down on a piece of wood and set your pot of cooked curry on there. Have a big thing of rice that you made at your house. You got a restaurant. People will stop and stand and eat, or they'll sit on the ground and eat. So those kind of places I've been to. And I've had people with nothing, with literally nothing, take their last dollar out of their pocket just to buy me lunch or to buy me a drink. Why? Because they had never met a white man before. So I can't say who's happier, right? Or which one is better. I'm not in a position to make that decision, right? So things were tough. Things were tough everywhere, not just 200 years ago or 300 years ago in a past life. So this Akashic Records, hopefully this is not going on too long here for you. It's this place that anyone can access. How do you do it? Well, when I meditate, I've been meditating for a number of years now. I've got a pretty good method. I'm at the point where if I don't sit, a lot of people, they'll sit like Indian style, like with your legs crossed and meditate. I cannot meditate that way. I could not do it. I tried for years, could never do it. One day I laid down on my bed. Now I don't lay down on my bed the same way I lay down when I sleep. I lay down perpendicular to how I sleep. And then, bam, if I lay down with the intent to meditate, within a minute, I am like in that meditation river, as I like to call it. So I can be meditating within a minute. And how I do it is I just say, okay, today's goal is to go to the Akashic, to see the Akashic Records, to go to that Hall of Records. And that's all I'm thinking about as I'm drifting off. And my brain waves are, calming me down, getting calmer and calmer and calmer. I see the river in front of me and boom, I enter the river. And for me, that's like I'm in the meditative state. I can still hear things going on around me in the room. In fact, my kids have instructions, strict instructions not to touch me while I'm meditating. That can mess things up pretty good, but they can talk to me. And then I'm able to raise myself up in this river high enough to where I can hear their voice clearly and I can answer, although my kids tell me that I speak really slow when I'm answering as I'm meditating. And then they'll say, okay, that's all I wanted to know, Dad, thanks. And then they leave the room and I drop back down into that deep, deep relaxation state. And just thinking, okay, today's goal is to visit the Akashic Records. I want to see XYZ. And then I just imagine I'm there looking at what I want. And then as I slip into that meditative state, I'm there. I'm there. So, I don't know what else I can tell you about how to access it. That's how I do it. It works out pretty well. Like I said, it requires a lot of concentration. There are times when I'm there, things start to get fuzzy. Like fuzzy, that's the only way I can think of it. Like my vision gets fuzzy, or it almost feels like, I feel a little tired. I'll just tell myself, focus, 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 focus. Bring yourself back, focus. We're in the Akashic, we're looking at the Akashic Records. This is serious stuff here, focus. And that usually like sharpens everything back up for me, just saying that to myself. And as I said, you can look at anything you want. And I also think there's like a librarian or someone there. I've never been there and seen other people, but one time when I was looking for something, I was like talking to myself out loud, and someone appeared and said, "Do you need help? I'm here to help you." And I said, "No, I think I got it, thanks." And then they disappeared. I don't know who that was, but I'm guessing that's like a librarian or something, the equivalent of a librarian. Maybe someone who has more experience than me can leave a comment down below. Okay, so that's what I know about the Akashic Records. It's a fascinating place. You can relive your past lives. You can see, what were you doing in a past life. And as you're watching your past lives, oh yeah, I should mention, as you're watching your past lives, you can actually say, I want to see this point, or, what was the purpose of that life? Why was, XYZ happening? And you should be taken right to that point, or the answer should be provided to you. I've always had the answer just kind of like, vroom, like just shoots into my head without me thinking about it at all. And then there are times where, I'll go there, do whatever, see whatever, see either one of my past lives or someone else's life to get clarity on something. And while I'm there, I kind of feel like I didn't quite do what I wanted to, but okay, my time is up. So you'll understand when you need to come back to your body out of that meditative state. And I've come back to my body, opened my eyes, and thought, geez, it didn't really work out well. And I'm like, wait a second. And then you think back to what you just saw, what you just did, and you go, oh no, that was perfect. Oh, okay. Oh, that's, and then it all floods back to me. So I've had times where that's happened also. You know, while I was there looking at the Akashic Records, I felt like I wasn't doing enough or what I had come to do. But then once I came, you know, once the meditation ended and I came back and opened my eyes, then I realized, oh no, I got it all. I got it all. Okay, cool. So that may be something that you experience too. I don't know. Okay, everyone, I hope this helped, this video here talking about the Akashic Records. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Okay, you guys, hope you liked the video. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.